and can reveal the beauty of our existence that because of trauma we had lost sight of. My name is Gabor Mate. I'm a retired medical doctor, and these days I travel the world speaking and teaching about child development, health, illness, stress, and trauma. And speaking about trauma is really part of the zeitgeist these days, and I'm very passionate about it for a simple reason. Because in 30 years or more of medical practice and of addiction medicine, what I found was that the common template for virtually all afflictions, mental illness, physical disease, is in fact trauma. And there's a wisdom in trauma when we realize that our traumatic responses and imprints are not ourselves, and that we can work them through and thus become ourselves. Virtually every week there's a study that more and more people are needing or seeking help for mental health issues. More and more youth are diagnosed with anxiety. Many more kids are diagnosed with the whole plethora of childhood conditions such as ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. Depression is rising. Youth suicide is rising. Addictions are rising. Genuinely, it's an epidemic. 20% of youth or more are now diagnosable with anxiety, according to all the recent studies. That's 1/5. And those are all the people who are sufficiently anxious to be diagnosed. Well, we're talking about an epidemic.
When you grow up in a circumstance like I grew up, you're waiting for somebody to scream at you. You're waiting for something to be thrown. You don't know if you're going to eat. You don't know if you're going to be evicted. So you're constantly anxious and stressed. I used to think this was a rarity. But when I talk to people, a huge number of people have these traumatic experiences as a child that they carry with them. It's like a monkey on your back.
Trauma is an overwhelming threat that you don't know how to deal with. So trauma is not the bad things that happen to you, but what happens inside you as a result of what happens to you.
My father was shot and killed on December 25th, 1999. They found his body in someone's front yard. So essentially I didn't have anybody to raise me, so I was raised in the juvenile court system. I've lived on the streets since I was 10 years old by myself. The law didn't scare me, and I mean, they could have locked me up, and what's the difference? Nobody out here is gonna miss me.
My mother, alcoholic, bad alcoholic. Like my father, sex addiction. His sex addiction ruined our whole family. You know, cheating caused divorce. I started heroin at 26. That's what really destroyed me. It just takes the pain away. I tried building my dream so many times. I don't really have a dream anymore.
So trauma fundamentally means a disconnection from self. Why do we get disconnected? Because it's too painful to be ourselves. That then becomes a lifelong dynamic. I no longer know how to deal with emotions. It means that in relationships, when I feel a bit hurt, I immediately withdraw, so I don't have to feel those emotions that I don't know what to do with. So there's a disconnect. It also means that when I have gut feelings, I don't follow them. So I create situations of risk for myself. Now, trauma also affects how our brains develop. Certain key brain circuits that have to do with how we react and respond and regulate ourselves, how we handle stress, how we interact with other people, how much empathy and insight that we have, how much compassion we have. These functions of the midfrontal cortex are limited and constricted by trauma because we now know that the brain develops an interaction with the environment. So the brains of traumatized children don't look like the brains of non-traumatized children.
You can take it.
I've had enough of your crap. You're going to start acting like a young man instead of a toddler.
As a matter of fact, her ass is on punishment right now, and she ain't even gonna go the fuck back outside.
What the fuck are you doing, Dad? I swear to God.
No,
There's
please.
no other way for you to learn this.
Dad, please stop.
During your first 18 years of life, if a parent or other adult in the household often or very often would swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, step inside the circle. If a parent or other adult in the household often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or threw something at you, step inside the circle. If a parent or other adult in the household often or very often ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured, step inside the circle. If you often felt that no one in your family loved you, step inside the circle. Step inside the circle.
I think society got prison wrong, and they're seeing what's wrong with people instead of what happened to people. Our mission at Compassion Prison Project is to transform communities and prisons with compassionate action. An adverse childhood experience is a terrible event that continues to happen to a child, and there's no way to know when it's going to happen again, which puts the kid into a hypervigilant state. I have 8 of those ACEs, and when I found out I have 8 adverse childhood experiences and that my behavior was a direct result of the trauma that I experienced in childhood, it changed my life. The men and women in prison, 64% of them have 6 or more of those.
Hi, Gabor. Monique? Hi, Gabor. I feel like I'm in a throne. I want to talk to you guys about why you think you got addicted, about what may happen to you as a child, the way you saw yourself as being deficient somehow.
I was kidnapped at 16 and sold off. So that's a trauma that's just something that's in my life that you can't turn around, right? And
Kidnapped by who?
there's a taxi driver who took me as a girlfriend when we were 16 and held us for 6 months in a motel and sold off my virginity.
And the police was looking for you all that time, and
Well, my mom just thought that I had run away from home, so she didn't look for me.
she didn't look for you.
No,
I really need your permission to continue or not to
it's
continue.
okay. I give you permission.
The taxi driver knew exactly who to kidnap. predator can always tell who's without protection. Anybody hate you as a child?
Yes, my father. He would spank us and take a belt to us.
Do you remember how that felt to you?
Like, I just remember the pain of it, instead of thinking, oh, why did I deserve this? I just remember the pain and
And how long did that go on for?
until I was approximately 16 and started fighting back.
So 10, 11 years. Okay. Let's say you're the mother of the 5-year-old, and this 5-year-old is being hit with a belt, and she's in pain. She doesn't understand, and then it just hurts. It hurts emotionally, because this man who's supposed to love me is beating me. So when you're being hit like that, there's only two possibilities. My father's a bad person or hates me, or I'm a bad person. So the only protection is to believe that, oh, I'm not lovable. Let's say you're the mother of the 5-year-old. Who would you want that 5-year-old to talk to?
Myself.
Okay, who did you talk to?
Nobody.
That's the trauma. In other words, by the time you're 5 years old, you're completely alone. What I'm suggesting really, Alicia, is that your mother was traumatized too. Do you know anything about her childhood?
And she was abused as a child as well from an alcoholic father.
See, she learned in her childhood not to pay attention to her feelings. That's the only way she could survive. So the reason she didn't know is not because she didn't love you, but because she herself was shut down inside. And that's what I'm saying. It's multi-generational. Okay? Yeah. Can't pick out who's at fault here. It didn't begin with anybody. It goes on and on and on from one generation to the next.
We were talking about the effects of slavery on our behavior. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I ain't agree with it when I first heard it. But then when he talked about the discipline, I had a flashback of how I used to get whipped with a bullwhip, naked. I didn't put the two and two together, but I realized, that's how slaves was whipped. Because it was generational trauma passed on from one mother to another mother to another mother, and it passed on to me. I still got marks on my legs and stuff behind that. And I just remembered there was no one I could run to, no one could help me. And she just was telling me how much she loved me, and she cried and she beat me with a bullwhip.
He's a best-selling author of 4 books published in 12 languages, sold on 5 continents. Please welcome Dr. Gabor Mate.
I actually wrote my speech out tonight, which I don't usually do, but maybe out of nervousness in front of this group of strong women. We all. The truth is that guys are afraid of women. I don't know if you realize that. That's a lot of the stuff that we do is totally out of fear. Well, when you felt bad as a kid, who did you speak to? When the pain is there and there's no one to share it with, then the child has very limited resources to deal with that, and what they do is they disconnect from themselves. When you disconnect from yourself, you no longer have yourself. You've lost yourself. When we talk about trauma, we usually think of something terrible happening to a person. But that's not the only trauma there is. And so the other kind of trauma may not have to do with terrible things happening to you.
Most people look at my childhood and, damn, you had an awesome, childhood, and because I had everything, we come from upper middle class, and in Idaho, and I got everything given to me, but that was their way of parenting. They'd give me everything, so I'd shut up and wouldn't bug them, because they're always too busy, they're always working.
So children don't get traumatized because they get hurt. Children get traumatized because they're alone with the hurt.
I'm a life for inmate. I'm here on a first-degree murder. I committed my crime when I was 20 years old. And I asked myself, what events in my life brought me to the point where I could think that it's okay to take a human life? And it It had to do with a lot of adverse childhood experiences. My main one as to why I started going downhill was being abandoned by my father. I looked up to him. I wanted to be just like my dad. He was my hero. But when I turned 8 or 9 years old, he got deported to Mexico. And that devastated me. As a kid, my mom used to tell me, Mijo, pray to God that he'll come back. But he never came.
A baby that you don't pick.